This is by the numbers, League of Legends edition. I don't know why I say that, because obviously Richard Lewis isn't here, so it's obviously League of Legends edition. Or Monty's actually finally been fired by OGN, and now it's CSGO edition with MonteCristo. So welcome to the show. I mean, he saw D-Man's transition, so you thought, why not, right?
Be a better move for my career, I think, in the long run.
I mean, D-Man thought the same, but
yeah. Well, I think I might do things a little bit differently than D-Man did, Thorin.
Okay. Well, you never know. You never know.
No, I do know.
Sometimes you reach that point in your life where you want to change things up. You think to yourself, I've conquered Call of Duty, I've conquered League of Legends. What's CSGO? Well, the community then will reject you, apparently. So this week, before we go into the specific leagues, there's a Thorin Swag Jar tournament for EU LCS that, as of the recording of this, has 15 hours that you can still enter in, has 100 and something spots still left in it, 140, 160 spots, I think, left in it. It's $10 to enter, and first place is $500. So that's more than it costs to enter by a lot. But you have to be first place. You have to be good to win. If you're a scrub...
or lucky.
Oh, exactly. That's the other key thing. One of the good things about Alphadraft is it mirrors real life, which is here's the problem with games. You have to be incredibly skilled to win games. You actually can't be lucky and win like a world championship. It's very, very unlikely it could happen because you'd have to be still good enough to make the final or something. Alphadraft, you could just be a complete cretin. You could just pick 5 people randomly that happen to fit in the 50,000. You might win the whole contest. Someone else might be crunching numbers. They might know about the game. You might just win the whole thing. So why just be that guy on Reddit who just says the idiotic thing like, I think Unicorns of Love will be in the final, and then you get nothing for it. You don't even get the credit because everyone says, well, you're just an idiot. This way, they can say, well, you're an idiot, and you can go, yeah, a rich idiot. You know my saying? Bullshit walks, Skrill talks. Skrill talks. So on that note, we're on to the show now. So we will start with, so I'm just making up like catchphrases now. That's not even like a trademark catchphrase or anything.
You're just sinking to the lowest possible level right now.
EU LCS. This is what we will start in. So, in the EU LCS, on day 1, we have, let me see, we start out with Elements versus Vitality. Now, Elements obviously have actually surprised people with the fact that on paper, they were one of the last teams to fill their roster. They looked appalling on paper, and everyone's like, this team will win 0 games. They have won some games, so can they have a chance against Vitality, Monty?
I would not say that is a likely outcome. They're 3-3, but I think Vitality is going to be the much better team. And even so, if you do think that Elements is going to win and take the upset here, you really want to focus on Mr. Rallas, actually, who has the highest amount of kills so far on Elements. So he's doing pretty well for himself in spite of perhaps not being on the greatest team. And it's Steve after that, actually. So these are kind of the carries that work within this Elements roster. There's not really anybody else you want to take. Maybe Sprattle. He's doing pretty well in terms of assists, but I think there are a lot better supports you could take. Okay. And I don't think they're going to win. I think Vitality's going to win. But the problem with Vitality is they don't get fantasy points. They're not good. Their top fantasy point earner is Cabashard, has the most kills. Maybe you take Cabashard here. He's actually, let's check how expensive he is.
77.
He's actually,
as one person to take, though, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's not sorting right for me right now, the salaries, actually. It's not sorting top to bottom, but it's okay. Like, Cabashard could be some pretty good value here. He's not the most expensive. Odoamne is higher than him. Vizichachi is higher than him. So that could be some good value, but otherwise, if you expect Vitality to win, they are one of those teams that just doesn't put fantasy points down, so not really worth it, I would say.
Is Mr. Rallis better this season than he was with Roccat?
I don't think he's substantially better. No.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit.
Giants versus Fnatic. I have to say, one thing about this season with Giants that's bumming me out a little bit is it seems like they don't have any of that upset potential they had last season. Like, one of the things was they would play these crazy games, Pepinero would go crazy, and they had the chance to upset. It feels like that never happens now. So
It
presumably they
does.
won't beat Fnatic.
I would assume they will not beat Fnatic. I mean, they are last place in the league. They're not looking too hot. And like you're saying, you don't even have those crazy games where a player like Pepinero really goes off any longer. You just have kind of rolling over and dying. This is another game, though, that is not going to be too great for fantasy just because Fnatic doesn't actually get very many fantasy points either. Gamsu is the top kill player on this team, even though his KDA isn't the highest. That would be Reckless, actually, who has probably the best chance of getting you fantasy points. And Gamsu, a lot of his kills are from that first week of competition where he got 9 kills to start out the league.
Yeah, I mean, his KDA dropped off quite a bit since then.
Yeah, his number of kills have dropped off significantly. Spirit is not doing awesome. Neither is Noxiac after the first week or so. So even though they are, I would say, likely to win this one, I would not pick their
And the problem
players.
is they're expensive, right, as well. I mean, basically,
Yeah, they're
only
expensive
Noxiac's
because they're like a
reasonable.
lock. But I maybe go for Gamsu, maybe go for Reckless here. That would be my advice. Fevman just hasn't been putting up at least the fantasy points this season.
So here's a game, Monty, which on paper you could have some crazy value in, which is G2 versus Origin. And here's the crazy part, Monty. The Origin players are all more expensive than the G2 players. Yet G2 lead the league. A lot of people would say Origin's like a one-man team right now. They haven't got any shape. Is there good value here?
Yeah, I think there is good value here. If G2 can continue to play aggressively, they could just knock down Origin in this match. And Perks is number 2 in the league when it comes to kills. He's got a 5.5 KDA also. He's getting a lot of fantasy points right now. Perks is your go-to guy on G2. Surprisingly, Kikis is doing pretty well. But there's the other factor, which is Sven from Origin is also tied with Perks for the highest number of kills in the EULCS. So maybe you go that way. And if you think Origin's going to win, you probably are playing around Sven, a.k.a. Niels. And if you're playing around G2, you probably want Perks. Otherwise, there's a pretty sharp drop-off for Origin. Second is Power of Evil. Third is probably going to be, well, second for G2 is Kikis. Trick, though, remember that Trick is still really high up in terms of assists, and assists are very valuable. So Trick could be really, really good here. And he is on the expensive end. He's second to Amazing in terms of salary, but Trick has been putting up a lot of assists and a lot of points, and so has Mythy for Origin. So those are the picks depending on who you think is going to win that game, as to who you might want to select.
Also,
I don't know who's going to win.
Also, I read on Reddit today that Udyr has the highest win rate in the jungle. And not only that, Monty, the best highest win rate build is AP Udyr. So maybe Trick was onto something. Maybe he's cracked it. I don't think anyone wants to see that in competitive. AP Udyr. The fuck's the point in that? Anyway. So then but in theory, that's a good game because a lot of people will be going on both sides of that, I imagine. Like a lot of people everyone's expecting Origin eventually to just turn the corner and flip the switch and just become super good.
Yeah. Eventually, that will probably happen. I mean, their roster, on paper, it should be working a lot better than it is.
So, okay, here's the scenario that's certainly interesting, which is that Roccat, who now apparently are just straight up using Extinct as their support from now on until Edward gets back, plays Unicorns of Love, who obviously had to replace Diamond Procs. So Visa versus Visa, actually Visa-V, that's the Visa-V, these two players. Who wins the Battle of the Visa denial?
I think Unicorns of Love does. They've looked okay with their substitutes, and I think that they have just a stronger roster overall. So in the case that I think Steelback is going to be definitely very highly valued here, which is why he's one of the more expensive AD carries this week because it's a little bit of a mismatch. But when it comes to kills, he's actually 4th in the league. Doesn't have as high of a KDA as some other people, but still going to be worth your time. And Vizicachi, too, has been doing really well as a top laner. So you could definitely get some value there. He's been pretty solid.
So the last game is one that doesn't look very good. It's H2K versus Splice. because first of all, H2K big favorite, and also the team that apparently love to win by just like 6 kills, and we're off. Did we kill you all? Well, we win the game then. So no,
Well,
fuck
the
you,
one
fantasy
the one
points.
outlier, of course, is Forgiven. So
Okay.
Forgiven still has an extremely high KDA, but that's why he's the most expensive AD carry
In the whole
in Europe.
competition.
So if I had to pick, sure, Forgiven's great, but maybe Steelback is a little better value. But Forgiven has a really high kill participation rate. He has a huge KDA. He's only died 3 times so far this season.
That's the problem, I think, with the KDA stat, is that obviously just the deaths can make it ridiculous, because anytime you have 0 deaths, you can have some ridiculous number, right? You remember when Meteos had that one where it was like a 47 KDA or something, when he hadn't died for like the first week or something of LCS. Like,
Yeah.
Come on, man. You can't be over 10 times more than the next best player. That's something's wrong with that stat when that starts happening. This is almost getting as dodgy as like quarterback rating now. Like, what's going on in these games here, boys? Got to fix the metrics here. So, okay. What's the best game overall in this week? G2 Origin?
Well, obviously, from a viewer's perspective, that would be the best game. I think Unicorns of Love versus Rocket has the highest chance to get you a lot of fantasy points from Unicorns of Love. That seems like a pretty good bet. Giants versus Fnatic could be a shit show too.
And I'll tell you who is the player who none of us think's a good player, but not only in real life does he seem to be getting better, but in fantasy he's pretty good. Steelback.
Yep.
Not a bad pickup, right? For this game.
Yeah, that's what we were talking
Expensive,
about.
Steelback. So.
Steelback 4th in kills, so in the league. That's pretty good recommendation.
That Hillersang is so good. Nah, I won't be that BM.
Actually, he's
I use
fourth.
the same.
He's
I won't
4th
use
in
the same
assists.
joke every single split, Monty. Eventually, I have to give someone credit. They actually did press the mouse buttons himself. Like, okay, Steelback, you did it, mate. You did it. Well done. Right. So over in NALCS, I will now load that up. Do we know yet if people are getting any of their players back? Like, is that even vaguely known? Because obviously we don't have the contests up here, so I'm going to have to go off the eSportpedia. Do we know if people get any of their players back this week who were visa locked?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe.
Because in NALCS, let me just go to it here.
I mean, it's mostly Tip and Echo Fox right now.
Sure. I mean, your player's back 100% now in theory.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So this week we have Liquid versus Dignitas. Now, Liquid was looking like a joke, but obviously they've managed to now put a win together. I mean, a bit of a come from behind win, but can they beat Dignitas?
I mean, they also did put it together a pretty solid win versus Energy, and they did go 2-0 in the last week. So I think that Dignitas, they actually should win this based on their current form. And with that said, Piglet has actually been doing super well in the league. He has the second highest kills behind Wild Turtle at a 6.2 KDA. So if you can get him, I think that this is going to be a solid week or a solid day to pick him up overall. He should be able to do that.
By the way, because you said Dignitas, but they obviously...
Oh, TL, yeah.
Okay.
Because the thing about Liquid is that even in their wins, they're getting a lot of kills. Like Energy games, high kill. Actually, has 19 kills, even though he hasn't even played all the games. He's played 5 out of 6 games.
Wait there a second.
Still...
You're going all robotic. I couldn't understand you. Wait there a sec. Okay, try talking now.
You're not going all robotic.
Okay, now it works. So say that last bit again. Like, who was it? Who was
Dardoch.
Dardoch. Okay.
Dardoch has a lot of kills, even though and a huge kill participation rate of 86.6%.
Yeah.
So he is doing extremely well, even though he played all the games, played 5, but still at the top 10 in terms of kills total.
Okay.
So he's been doing really well. Also, way up there when it comes to assists. So Dardoch is very valuable from a fantasy perspective, especially on a day where you think that they're going to win. So in general, Team Liquid is going to be a good pickup because they get a lot of kills and they're not the most efficient at closing, but they do get large leads.
Oh, I've realized we didn't do day 2 of EULCS. Well, whatever. We'll do the NA and then we'll circle back on day 2 of that. So,
all right.
Next match, C9 versus Renegades. Well, Renegades has one game, Monty. So explain to me, is there, for someone putting actually Cloud9 should win this, right?
I would rate them as the favorites, but the issue with Cloud9 is they're not actually very good at getting fantasy points. Cloud9 is a weird case where Rush actually has the most kills of any player on Cloud9, and it's still only 16 this season. So Cloud9 back to being basically useless in fantasy, and that means that they just don't get points. Pretty big problem if you're going to be going for them and a win in terms of fantasy.
Okay. CLG versus Immortals. CLG is obviously I'd say they've been like understatedly good. If you look overall how they've done, like they've put together wins that no one expected so much from the roster. Can they actually beat Immortals though, that no one's beaten so far?
I think Immortals has issues that haven't been exposed yet. And one of them is Immortals playing too far forward and being able to be caught out. CLG is a smart team in how they play the map. They still have some pretty good shot calling. I think CLG has a chance, at least for an upset here, which might make certain players more valuable. For example, in the scenario where they do get an upset, something people might not expect is Huhi actually has the third highest kills in the league. He played really poorly at IEM San Jose, but he's very much stepped up since then. So he's been doing very well on an individual basis, and Huhi and Stixay may be able to carry this game. Now, if you want the more obvious choice, Immortals Wild Turtle is #1 in the league. He has a huge 14.8 KDA right now. He's amazing for fantasy points. So that's an easy choice if you think Immortals are going to take the game. Pobelter also in the top 5 when it comes to kills. So both these guys are good picks, but there's there is the possibility of an upset, and Huhi and Stixay will get a lot of points if that happens.
So TSM plays Echo Fox, and obviously we don't know, but I would assume so far that Echo Fox doesn't have the players yet if they were the latest to apply and all the rest of it.
I mean, I can tell you right now.
Win.
I can tell you right now, it takes a month or more to get that visa done.
Okay.
And the players also have to leave the country in order to have an interview for the visa. So the odds that Echo Fox's players are going to be participating is basically close to zero, I would say.
So then the question then becomes, do TSM players get fantasy points in stomps?
Well, that is the question. And as far as TSM goes, it's been about double lift this season for them. Bjergsen, not the biggest fantasy point generator, so double lift is the one you actually want to target here. Unfortunately for double lift, his KDA isn't good because he's died a lot, but in the last couple weeks he's been doing much better.
I mean, one of the reasons I suspect why Bjergsen hasn't had such good stats is because he seems to change champion almost every game, it feels like. So he's not the straight hard carry he was in the past seasons. What about...
Yeah, well, I think they're trying to build around a more diverse set of strategies.
I think Doublelift just lost trust in him. But with that meme, we will now move on to Energy versus Tip. Tip, surprising, right? Considering they've got like this Frankenstein roster. But can they somehow, they're 50% right now, Monty, win rate, can they upset that one-dimensional mid laner called GBM, who's just starting to learn some champions in this game?
Jesus Christ. I have no idea how that was even put on paper with a series.
It's still being worked with.
Wait, what?
Well, there was a recent comment where when he won the recent game on Zillion, the LoL eSports comment said that like he had a good game after like something like after a slump or after like a couple of bad games. And so I'm pretty sure that means they just went on eSportspedia and saw that in those games he lost and didn't have loads of kills and just assumed that means he had a bad game. You know, like that classic like didn't watch the game syndrome. Whereas if you watched all of his games, he wasn't the reason they were losing these games, put that way. Was he supposed to do 1v9 versus Immortals or something? Like, okay, mate.
You know, what's funny is Energy didn't even really play that badly against Immortals.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Even in the losses, he did fine. So I don't know who wrote that. Like, basically, that's the guy where, I mean, this might sound too extreme, but I'd like to strap him to a chair and have a car battery, and I'll get the truth out of him, Monty, as to whether you really watch those games or not. I'm not sure LoL eSports does it that way, but that's my method. And I'm sticking with it. It gets results. Listen, if the bomb's going to blow up, I'm going to get that information. Sad thing is, actually, ethically, I'm totally against that sort of torture rendition. But for comedic purposes, on a fantasy esports talk show, why not? I am now into it.
Why not? Why not condone brutal methods of torture?
Just to get information on whether someone watched a video game. So that's the turning point, I reckon. So on day 2, wait a second. So NRG should win this game, in theory.
Yes.
Can Tip get the upset here, though?
No.
How have they won any of these games?
I don't know.
If someone wants to take a crazy flyer that Tip win, which player would you pick on Tip?
Oh, God.
Because I assume some of them are going to be cheap.
I'm sure they will be.
So who's the Hail Mary?
I mean, the weird thing about Tip is they don't have any players in like the top 25 of kills. It's like MASH.
Okay.
Is the highest one. I would not take any of their players. I think that sounds like a really bad idea. See, I would, however, take Altec, perhaps.
See, I'm calling right now Tip to be the new, like, they're going to be the New York Giants of those, sort of like, what was it, like 2007, 2013, or 2011, I think it was. They're going to go like, they're going to be the unicorns of love. They're going to go like 50% throughout the season. Then they're going to have an inspired run through the playoffs where some hero takes them all the way. So Don't Mash Me is the Eli Manning of this team. That's what you're saying, basically.
Wow, you're reducing him to Eli Manning, huh?
Why not? That's how much respect I have for him. None. Overrated. But at least he won something. So, who was the best NRG player?
Altec and GBM are going to be the two go-tos there. Conquan has actually quietly been getting a lot of assists this season, so he may be good too. But I assume that most of these players are going to be super expensive. So I don't know how many it's actually feasible to stuff in your Alphadraft roster.
What would you guess is the best fantasy game of the day? Liquid Dig?
Yes. Liquid Dig. 100%.
Because obviously you'd imagine no matter who's ahead, there's a chance of throwing and the game going back and forwards and all that good shit.
It could be TSM Echo Fox too, but I think Liquid Dig is the most likely one.
Okay. So Immortals play Liquid in the first game of day 2. Now, no matter how hyped you are about Liquid, they're not going to beat Immortals.
No, probably not. But Liquid could actually fight back and move this game into a high number of kills. So this could be the requisite
the game to get the Immortals.
High kill, shit show of the day. And Adrian, remember, still playing a very supportive style, and he has died. Let me check how many times he's died. He has died 3 times so far with 67 assists. So you probably want to go for him if he's going to keep playing Janna and Soraka, just because assists are so valuable. So he is the one who's really putting up a ridiculous number of points in Alphadraft.
And Cloud9 plays NRG. Now, this looks like a good game on paper.
I think NRG is probably just going to run over them. They just have better players at pretty much every position. So Altec, GBM, Conquan, probably your go-to guys.
Okay, Renegades, TSM.
Again, Doublelift's been doing well. He's been pretty much the only performer on TSM, so it's a little hard.
How do you like that? We're now at a position, Monty, where it's like there's 2 revenge games every season. I mean, every time CLG plays your team, people are like, oh, I can't wait to see, will Monty's team get... But now Doublelift also can be like, well, now it's TSM as well. I mean, obviously, Monty, for the purpose of the joke, Doublelift joining TSM is the only reason why that would become a revenge game. There was never any previous hostility there. We used to love that team. We always spent a lot of time bigging them up on Salmon Insight.
Yeah. I mean, just we were filled with compliments for their fantastic ownership and great decision-making, really professional conduct.
Ethical superiority, everything, just everything. Spiritual attunedness to the universe. Just great guys. Listen, in many ways, I feel like the spirit of Ember actually carries on into TSM, actually, because I think that the best owners are the best human beings. So, You can't doubt that Reginald's being one of the best owners, Monty. So I think you understand where this is going. He's clearly one of the best human beings. Didn't even have to say anything there. Slightly edgy in its own way. So, okay, let's go over to Tip versus CLG. Is CLG the sort of team where Tip can pull that bullshit upset out?
No, I think CLG they're convincing in that they have some very good shot calling. So I would just, say that this is probably going to go over to CLG. Put it on Huhi. That's what I would say. Without a stable mid laner with the likes of Tip right now, assuming that they're still having those visa issues, Huhi should be the one that can really go off.
And then the last game of the day is Dignitas Echo Fox. Now, shouldn't this on paper be a good game for fantasy?
Yes, it should be. I think you're right. The question is here, who do you pick? Shifter has actually been getting a lot of kills this season. I know you will be particularly shocked to hear that, Thorin, but Shifter actually has been the main carry on Dignitas and has been showing up in a way that he typically hasn't. He's been playing Assassins. He's been doing pretty well. So Shifter, this is the guy you want to go for on Dignitas. Apollo has been mopping up, but hasn't been that impressive in his own right. That's who I would pick up from Dignitas if you really want to get a lot of points. Again, Tip.
Okay. So,
I mean, the whole thing about Echo Fox is that they haven't had any performers whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
With Echo Fox, I'm just trying to find.
I mean, it doesn't help that they don't have Frog.
I mean, Keith has gotten a decent amount of kills, but not enough, I think, to justify a pick.
So, okay, since we didn't do it before, now let's do day 2 of EU. So that starts off with G2 Splice. So fairly obvious G2 win, but the question is, will G2 get the points?
Yeah, they usually do. And they tend to play bloody games. They tend to overextend a little bit and die. And Trick and Perks, I think that's what you want to go for again. Trick is actually really a good jungle pick. He's been doing extremely well.
Okay, so on paper, this game sounds like crap. Elements H2K.
Forgiven. What you got? Again, forgiven. What else are you going to say? Vitality Unicorns of Love is interesting, though. Again, Vitality, even though they have a winning record, they haven't gotten very many fantasy points. And Unicorns of Love have been more reliable when it comes to that, particularly Steelback.
So this is where you load up for the upset? I mean, you'd have to figure if they did get the upset,
UOL and Vitality are the same record right now, so it's not really an upset, right?
No, but I mean, it's probably going to be reasonably priced players. So if UOL wins and you have the UOL players, I wouldn't be surprised if you win the contest you're in for that. Since I think a lot of other people will pick like H2K players, G2 players, but
I don't know. Yeah, this one's a tough one to call. Without Diamond, maybe you tip it to Vitality just a little bit, but the upside for fantasy is that if UOL wins, you're probably just going to get a lot of points if you have Steelback and Vizicachi.
Okay, so Origin Giants haven't won a game, as we've already said. So
yeah, take Origin here.
Still take Origin players?
Take Origin, pick Mithy, pick Sven, get lots of points. That's my advice.
Right. Fnatic should beat Rocket. It should be a reasonably easy win.
Yep. But Fnatic hasn't been putting the points together, so maybe you take Reckless here. Maybe you just don't even pick out of this game whatsoever.
So on this week, Unicorns of Love Vitality seems like the best game. The question is that a game you could... I mean, obviously, it's only a best of one, so it's hard to bet both sides. Is this the clear-cut one where you're just picking the one that you think is going to win and getting as many of their players as you can?
Vitality, even their wins, hasn't been getting points. So in some ways, it actually, if you think Vitality is going to win, it may be better to pick G2 players, frankly. But the Vitality players will probably be cheaper because they're up against Unicorns of Love. It's going to be a closer game.
Okay.
Tough.
So over in LCK, there's also a Thorin swag jar because you have to realize, listen, sometimes you're trying to you date, like, you know, there's always an episode in a Superman comic or an American TV show where the main character is dating two women at once, and he's having to go to dinner with one, and then he says, "Oh, excuse me, I just need to go to the bathroom." And then he runs to the next restaurant and he goes in there and he goes, "Oh, sorry, I'm late. Yeah, let's get a table." And then he has to like talk to her. Yeah. Oh, I have to take a phone call. Then he runs back to the other restaurant, and it never quite works out. Eventually, you have to pick one. So Alphadraft's realized I bring the hits. I'm putting in solid hours. I'm getting the videos. I'm getting on Turner now. So they've loaded up with me. I'm now the expert on LCK. They've made my contest on there. Monty's contest is nowhere to be seen. It feels awkward at the moment. Like, I don't know what's, you know. It was a good run. You had a good run, Monty.
My braggart corner no longer exists.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal with that is. I don't even decide that, but I appreciate the vote of confidence by the guys over at Alphadraft. So obviously, yeah, same thing, $10 entry. That one's a lot smaller, admittedly, because obviously less people play LCK, so that one's out 50 people. So you only have to beat 49 nerds who half of them probably don't even truly understand Korean League of Legends. Some of them probably even write for LoL eSports. All I'm saying is easy money. Come get it, guys. So in LCK, day 2 and day 3, let's have a look here. So we start off with a dog shit game, which is the best team in the league, undefeated Rocks, plays Freaks. Now, can Freaks even get a game? Is there any reason to believe they could even get one game? Is there anything about them? Anything, Monty? I mean, Anarchy used to every now and then steal a game. Could it?
I mean, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything last week when they played Longzhou. They got rolled pretty hard. The Africa Freaks record right now is they've lost to Jin Air, KT, Longzhou, and Samsung. The only team they've beaten is Spenu. So I would go with no. No, they can't win a game. It will probably be very one-sided. But that said,
Kuro has a pretty nice KDA.
Yeah, Kuro has 62 kills at a 7.6 KDA right now. And Smeb has the 3rd most kills in the league, and Prey has the 5th most kills in the league. So they have 3 players in the top 5.
Oh, by the way, since there'll be a little bit of time since I'm an insight, I'll just tell you on this show. I was joking with Kefka, but I think I can predict the future here. I'm willing to bet, because I think they don't watch this show much, so this won't put them off. I'm willing to bet, are you ready? Within the next 2 weeks, someone, I say someone, we all know who it is, will write an article on LoL eSports which will explain that Kuro is not only the best player on his team, he's the best in Korea at mid lane because he's got the KDA, his team wins all the game. So I guarantee it's going to happen. They're going to find a way to make him the best. Because I've noticed it's not that they hate Koreans. They just hate the consensus best Koreans. They always have to pick like Easy Hoon to be the best or Pawn. They have to find some hipster way to put a Korean in there. So I guarantee it's coming, Monty. Kuro article's coming. I bet you.
All right. What are you betting me?
Nothing. I'm just betting that it will happen. I think it's just a statement, really. I think it will happen. There we go. So
I wasn't going to bet on the other side of that anyway, because I think you're probably right.
Problem is, like, you can see the point I'm making. It's only something you can make a point on based on like statistics and things which if you don't like, look at the context. Like, if you look at the guy play, yeah, he's certainly not bad. He's improved and he's in his meta. Come on, man. There's no way he's the best. He's not even the best player on his team, for fuck's sake. He's playing with monsters.
He has gotten better. I mean, I think he is good, sure, but he's definitely not the best mid laner. But
he's one of those players.
But for the purposes of fantasy, he is the best mid laner.
Yeah. No, but here's the funny thing. He's one of those players where sometimes when people just quote stats, I just think to myself, do you understand how the game's played? Like, you could be on a fantastic team in any sport, and if you're like the player who plays the most defensive role, well, you're not going to score the most points, are you? That's not your fucking role. So likewise, if you're in a team with like godlike support player, okay, godlike support player, godlike jungler, okay, godlike jungler, well, if you're the person who gets all the fucking burst damage in your champion, you might get the kill there when that other guy does all the godlike shit. Therefore, the kill doesn't mean that you were the better player. I don't think it's such an obtuse point, believe it or not. Also, if you play fucking Victor and everyone else does everything and you just blast that laser across him, you get to get the kill. We've all seen some chump in solo queue do that and steal the kill. Like, that's what he's doing in pro games. Admittedly, he's not stealing it. They want that kill back. Okay, so here's a game for you.
So wait. No. To talk about, I want to talk about like more about the Tigers too, because their games are in the words of Hobbes, usually nasty, brutish, and short. But they're short with a very large amount of kills and a high amount of aggression. So that's why they keep topping all of these charts.
Yeah.
And pretty much you can't go wrong with them. Even Peanut has higher kills than a lot of mid laners like Kuzan, Crown, Mickey, Sasin. He's been doing super well. Gorilla leads the league with a shocking 129 assists. Peanut is second in the league at 107 assists. So, I mean, just jam as many of these fuckers onto your team as you can, really. Even if it's a 2-0, they're a team that gets so many points that you can still come out ahead, even if you pick winning players in a 3-game series.
Whereas in contrast, we spent all of last year saying, even though SKT will win this game, do not pick their players. They do not get fantasy points.
Well, the Tigers are playing a different
does
game
not
now.
get fantasy points. Okay.
I mean, SKT, here's the thing. SKT actually has been putting up more fantasy points because they haven't been as clean in their macro play, and they've been playing a lot around Bang and protect the Bang compositions. So he's number 2 in terms of kills. He has a higher KDA than Kuro does. So Bang is actually a very good choice because of the team compositions and the way they've been playing.
See,
Faker's a good choice too.
Protect the Bang sounds like some sort of civil rights protest in Iran or something, you know? Like, you shouldn't have to be married. Come on, man. Protect the Bang. Like, listen. The anarcho-capitalists, they know best. So here's the question for you, Monty. Has SKT fallen so far that Svenu could win a game off them?
I don't think that's realistic. EM Fire won a game, but I don't think Svenu can. If it's still probably going to be one-sided,
okay,
I'd take, if you want to grab Bang or Faker here, they are going to be pretty good picks, I think.
So up next, are you ready, Monty? It's your children against my children. Because now that you cast them out, Monty, at the wrong time exactly, I've taken Jinair in.
What the fuck? You can't take Jinair.
I know he abandoned you.
Fine.
He abandoned you to take that KT Rolster team back in and took them on that holiday to Worlds. It didn't work out how he wanted. It's okay, Jinair. You can come in with me. I still love you. And they've rewarded me and my love. So Jinair will play Samsung, who will actually win the series.
Okay, but Jinair, look at their record so far. They've beaten the Freaks, CJ Entis, EM Fire, and
Doing work. Yeah, that's right. Doing work, Monty.
Thorin, they have beat the bottom 4 teams in the league, who have a combined total of 3 wins between the 4 teams.
You can only beat who's put in front of you, Monty, and they've done a damn good job.
Some of these games haven't even been that convincing, especially the series against the Freaks. They did beat SK Telecom 2-0, though, so that's sort of the outlier here.
Yeah.
But now they actually have to play against consecutively.
Well,
like
you've set it up there, Monty. You're setting it up that Samsung should win. You're setting it up that Samsung should win.
And they have to play KT, the Tigers, and Samsung in their next 3 matches.
Okay.
So we're going to really figure out a lot about Jinair.
Okay.
Because it's been even Jinair in their wins in their last series, they dragged it out. Didn't look that convincing. If you want to take Jinair players, go for Pilot and Kuzan. Those are going to be the go-to guys.
Okay. So here's the thing. I challenge you. I suggest we do a head-to-head, and you have to make your team mostly composed of Samsung players, and I'll take mostly Jinair players, and we'll see who wins. I challenge you.
I think you'll win, but I will do it.
Listen, we'll see what happens. So,
I mean, I'm in agreement with you, so I think Jinair will win this match.
Oh, that sucks then. I thought you were going to, because you were building it up like Samsung was going to win. You were like, oh, look at the record of Jinair. It's not that good. Samsung's on the rise. Like, and at the last second, you pulled your chute and you just hopped out the plane.
The problem with Samsung is that they beat Longzhu, so they also had an upset like Jinair, and their losses have been against KT, the Rocks Tigers, and SKT. So they've actually had all of those matches back to back to back. They had to play all 3 of those teams in a row.
Yeah.
But they did beat Longzhu, and they did take out 2-0 both the Freaks and EM Fire. I think it could be close, actually.
Okay.
All right, we'll do the head-to-head.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, we'll do it after this. So next up, we have... Wait a second, that's the wrong one. Okay, next up we have the last game, which is EM Fire versus Longdew. Now, is Longdew has obviously looked a bit better. Are they going to 2-0 EM Fire? Because you think EM Fire is trash, right?
Well, they actually, EM Fire has been looking better as time goes on. They didn't play a terrible series. They didn't play a terrible series yesterday against KT, actually, and they did push SKT to 3 games, and SKT nearly lost to them last week. Like, it was very, very close. With how Longdew is looking, because Longdew's been so inconsistent, I think it depends on what starting roster Longdew runs. If they run Crash, if there's a chance that they can run Crash, you should definitely pick their jungler, because he had one of the most impressive rookie debuts I've ever seen last night. So their new jungler is looking super good. Depends on whether they use him or Chaser. Obviously, Chaser is a monster in his own right. So going with their jungler might not be a bad choice in any event.
Okay.
I think that series could easily go to 3 games and be messy.
So then the question is that the best series over Samsung Jin? Or do you just pick both and make all your team from both?
You could definitely do that.
Okay.
You could definitely do that.
Right, well, that's all the leagues, Monty, since we don't know anything about China. So if you do play Alphadraft, be sure to always do it by the numbers.